I saw vivid visions of my wife and daughter. They were walking away from me. I begged them to come back, but they kept walking. Suddenly, a humongous tentacle came out of nowhere and crashed down, killing the both of them. I screamed at the top of my lungs and squeezed my eyes shut. When I opened them, I was laying on a dirty bed, staring at the ceiling of a rickety cabin. My daughter, Lily, was lying in the bed next to me. She was still asleep. Since I couldn't rest, I decided to leave the cabin and go outside. My feet crunched in the sand, felt a cool breeze fly by, and the taste of salt in my mouth. I looked up at the green, starry night sky. The mere sight of it was a reminder of the horrors that lay beyond. I tiptoed to the edge of the island and sat on a small wooden dock. As I sat, I wondered why. Why me, and Lily of all people, had to be the last survivors of the human race. Then I heard a voice behind me. "Dad?" It said. "What are you doing?" I quickly turned around and saw Lily standing behind me. I said back to her, "Nothing, honey, just couldn't sleep." "Another nightmare?" she asked. "Yeah." She sat next to me and said, "Sometimes I wonder if this is the nightmare." "It is," I said back to her, "just not one you can wake up from." She leaned on my shoulder and said, "I miss Mom." I said back to her, "I do too, sweetie. I do too." "Dad?" she asked, "is this it?" "What do you mean? Is this the end?" "I don't know. Do you think maybe there are more? More survivors like us?" "I don't know. I don't know." The next day, I opened a small wooden cabinet. The only thing left in it was one bottle of canned food. Wouldn't be enough to feed both of us. I decided it should go to Lily instead of me. I handed it to her and said, "Here, it's the last one." Her eyes widened, and she said, "What?" "Are you sure? I thought there was a lot more in there. What are you supposed to eat?" I replied, I I don't know. You need it more than I do." "Dad, I can't let you starve to death. What other choice do we have? It's either me or you." "You know what? It doesn't matter. We're just gonna lay here and rot anyway." "Lily, don't say that." She got up and downheartedly left the cabin. I followed her outside, only to be greeted by a foggy abyss surrounding the island. The thick layer of fog obscured my vision, but the island was small. It wouldn't take me long to search it. As I searched, I began to hear faint crying in the distance. I followed it and eventually found her hiding place. I found her curled into a ball, hiding under part of a broken boat. I lifted it off of her. She looked up at me and said, "I don't want to lose you." I looked down at her. "I don't want to lose you either." Days had gone by, and neither of us had eaten anything. It was a struggle just to stay awake. Every movement I made felt like 1,000 pins stabbing into my body. The mere thought of my daughter going through this same torture haunted me. At one point, I even thought to myself, "Can't let her live like this. Maybe it would be better if both of us—" No! That's crazy. Why would I ever consider that? I stood up and dragged myself into the cabin. I peeked inside and saw Lily sleeping on her bed. Her skin was pale and her eyes were sunken inward. She looked like a corpse. I couldn't just leave her like this. I had to do something. But then, like a worm in the dirt, an idea slipped into my head. It probably wouldn't work, but it was worth a try. I stayed up all night, pouring every ounce of energy I had into my creation. At one point, I accidentally nailed my finger to a wooden plank. It hurt like hell, but I kept going. Began wondering if this was all really worth it. Even if we did escape, where would we go? I considered giving up. When I looked back at the cabin, I knew she was still in pain. If this had the slightest chance of working, I had to take it. After a long night of back-breaking labor, I finished my creation. I creeped into the cabin and tugged on Lily's shoulder till she was awake. What? Dad? What are you? We're getting out of here. Dad, what are you talking about? Come on, I have to show you something. I took her outside and showed her a small wooden boat. Might not be much, but it's enough to get us out of here. The two of us pushed the boat off the edge of the island. We jumped inside and began rowing. Keep going, I yelled. Our makeshift boat rode through thick layers of fog. We began hearing strange noises in the distance and seeing strange silhouettes popping out of the water. I saw Lily was starting to get worried about all this. Dad? She said anxiously. Just ignore it. We're going to get through this. We kept rowing, but the noises only got worse. The more we strayed from the island, the louder they got. Dad, I don't like this. We should go back. I understood her concern, but we already made it this far. Dad, please! Suddenly, the fog began to fade. The sky was all one big black and green void, with yellow stars sprinkled here and there. Then I began to notice something. An enormous shadow lurking beneath the boat. But it wasn't a creature. It was a creature's limb. Then I realized most of its body was already above the water. I didn't see it at first. It seemed to blend in with the sky. Or maybe I just didn't want to see it. It looked like a squid, but with the characteristics of an eel, and it seemed to have destroyed buildings sticking out of its body. I knew there was no escape. I grabbed Lily and whispered to her, I love you. Then she quietly whispered back, I love you too, Dad.